Welcome to today's webinar, 7 Steps to Small Business Success. The moderator is Cision Wei, Director of Product Management for PR Web.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. I am Cision Wei, the Director of Product Management here, and today we are going to be discussing 7 steps to small business marketing success. A few house cleaning items before we get started. For one, if you are an active Twitter user and you want to follow along on Twitter and participate on Twitter, we are going to be using hashtag PRWDTM, which you will also see in the bottom right of the slide deck, to frame our conversation on Twitter. After this presentation, we are also going to be sending out an email containing presentation slides and a link to the recording. So if you have to skip out early or you want to share the slide deck with some of your colleagues or something like that, you'll be able to do so because we'll be sending you an actual copy of the slides as well as a link to the archived webinar itself. As a special bonus, 5 randomly selected webinar attendees will receive a copy of the book, Duct Tape Marketing, the World's Most Practical Small Business Marketing Guide. We will be contacting you directly after the live event to notify you if you have won this award. So a bit about the flow of today's presentation. The first segment is going to be devoted to just a standard presentation, and our speaker is going to be talking about today's topic. During that time, if you want to submit your questions, I'll be sort of lurking around the Q&A, as will some of our other administrators here, and we'll be answering your questions. And these can be logistical questions about the webinar. They can be questions about Vocus or PR Web or any of the other topics that our webinar speaker is talking on. And I'm going to be gathering the most frequently asked questions and compiling them here. So after the presentation, we're going to jump right into a Q&A session, which is going to hopefully be around 15 minutes. And at that point in time, I'll be addressing your questions to today's speaker. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce today's speaker, John Jantz, who is a marketing and digital technology coach, award-winning social media publisher and author of Duct Tape Marketing, which is the book that we are going to be giving out to 5 lucky attendees after today's webinar. He's the creator of the Duct Tape Marketing Small Business Marketing System. His website is at www.ducttapemarketing.com, which you can see on the slide right now. He is a very popular presenter at marketing workshops. He's a columnist for Entrepreneur Magazine, and his Duct Tape Marketing blog was chosen as a Forbes favorite for small business and marketing. And it is also a Harvard Business School featured marketing site. So with all that being said, John, I'm going to turn it over to you and sit back, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Hey, thanks, Jan. And welcome, good morning, good afternoon, and I appreciate you taking the time to further your marketing education, and quite frankly, I want to give a shout-out to PR Web for making this kind of information available. I give this presentation a lot because it really is kind of the core duct tape marketing point of view. And one of the things that I find is I'm going to give you a lot of information and a lot of action items, and I'm going to give it to you really in a hurry. I'm going to talk about the entire systematic approach to marketing in 45 minutes or less. So one of the things that I want to suggest and hope that I can get you to commit to doing is take lots of good notes today, but find at some point during this presentation 1 or 2 items that you star or circle or highlight or whatever it is you do, and you commit to taking action on them. Because one of the things I find a lot of small business owners do, I can say this because I am one, is you attend something like this, you go to a workshop, you make pages and pages of notes, and then you stick them in a drawer somewhere. And even though they were good ideas, you don't do anything with them. And so today my hope is that you find 1 or 2 really actionable ideas, and you do that very thing. You take action on them. Because there are many, many marketers here on this call, and in many cases when I give workshops, I could actually go around, if we had a slide where we wanted to do some polling, I could go around this group and ask, what your definition of marketing is. And I'd probably get, we have a lot of people on the call here today, I would probably get very, very many different definitions of marketing. And to some degree, all of them would have a kernel of truth to them, except the ones that come right out of textbooks that we're using in college still. But after actually working with small business owners for years now, tens of thousands of small business owners, I've developed kind of my own definition of marketing, and I just want to share it with you today because it really makes up the basis of this entire conversation, and it is a definition that in my mind is really steeped in real world, what the small business owner actually has to is up against on a day-to-day basis. So my definition of marketing is getting someone who has a need to know, like, and trust you. And I really do believe that that is the business that small business owners engage in successful marketing. Now, for any of you on the call who have a $1 million advertising budget or so, this won't be as relevant to you. But since most of the small business owners that I talk to don't have that $1 million ad budget, because see, you can buy a little bit of know, like, and trust if you have enough money to spend. But what most small business owners need to do, in my mind, or what I've discovered certainly from experience, is to take a very systematic approach to doing this thing called building know, like, and trust. And I think that many small business owners, when I talk about this idea of a systematic approach to marketing, it's like the light bulb goes on. They have no problem thinking in terms of systems for making it, fixing it, shipping it, getting the work done on a day-to-day basis, hiring people, firing people, getting the bills paid, all the things, all the processes that make a business run smoothly. But then you start talking about systems when it comes to marketing, and all of a sudden it's like, oh no, that's this kind of vague, undefined thing that we have to go out and hire specialists to do. And as far as I'm concerned, nothing could be farther from the truth. Marketing is indeed a system. You can take a very systematic approach to marketing. In fact, no surprise here, I believe it's probably the most important system in any small business. So in a way, these steps that you see on here, these components of the system, in a way, this is going to be our agenda for the rest of the time that we spend together. So let's get into how somebody might actually address building some of these systems. One of the core points of view, certainly for me and for the duct tape marketing system, is this idea of strategy, developing a marketing strategy before we ever start talking about tactics. I can't tell you how many small business owners have come to me and said, what's the one thing I should do to make my business take off? And of course, they're talking about the one tactical thing. Should I be on Facebook? Should I do direct mail? And the fact of the matter is, I can't answer any of those questions unless I understand what their strategy is. And to some degree, if you can develop a very, very effective, foolproof strategy that's based in the real world, to some degree, the tactics that you choose to implement that strategy maybe aren't that important. Now, they're important, but what I mean is that a variety of tactics will actually work if you have a solid marketing strategy. So the two components that make up strategy for me, and they really are the first two steps, is an idea of narrowing your focus to an ideal customer and then differentiating your business. So let's get into both of those pieces, and they kind of work hand in hand to really fill out this idea of a marketing strategy. And then really from that, everything flows. Number one, narrow your market focus. Most small businesses, and in fact they get into this sometimes honestly, they start their business with a target market perhaps in mind, but then they end up their target market, or their definition of their target market, so often expands to really something like anyone who we think will pay us. And if somebody calls up and asks you to do something, I mean, think in your own experience, most small businesses have done this. Somebody calls up and suggests that they'll pay you to do something, and even if that's not really something you do or know how to do, sure, we'll do that. They said they'd pay us. And the next thing you do, what happens is you become really no things to anyone. Your business, who your target market, who you actually are uniquely qualified to serve, becomes extremely blurred. Now, a lot of small businesses have really, again, this idea of a target market is one that you'll find in any book, and I want to expand it a bit to something that I call an ideal customer. So I want to go beyond this idea of target. A lot of times people have a target in mind because they think, gosh, there's lots of opportunity in this market. Lots of people want to buy stuff in this market, and they define that as their target market. And what I want to suggest is that there is every business that is out there actually is suited to serve a very narrow segment of the market in a way that nobody else can. And it's your job as a business, and trust me, this will evolve over time, but it's your job as a business to identify what really is that kind of sweet spot. And for many people, it can involve some things that maybe you're not used to measuring. Do they value what you do? Do they value the way you work? Do they value your people? Is that business, is that customer profitable? And that's, for some people, it sounds like kind of a strange thing to ask, but we all take work that's not profitable because it's not necessarily suited. Maybe it's a type of work we used to do, but we've evolved to doing a different kind of work, or that's a product that we don't really support anymore. And all of those types of situations that just sort of linger in a business lead to unprofitable work. The third qualification, do they already refer you? In other words, what I would actually suggest that you do, one of the action steps I would certainly suggest many of you do, is that you go to your entire customer base right now, and I'm going to talk about the demographics and all of the various things that marketers always talk about. You want to characterize all of your business based on those. But then I also want you to add a couple of columns and come up with some assessment for how do you feel they value what you do? I mean, is that a profitable customer? Do they already refer you? And for the folks that meet all three of those criteria, I really want you to then study long and hard the more traditional things in marketing like demographics and psychographics. So in other words, is there a certain size of business? Did they have a certain kind of problem? Did they have a certain challenge? Are there certain things they value? I mean, all the things that you for the most part, can know about that select group of businesses that you believe value what you do. I can even take it a step further. Small business is so personal. In some cases, it might be you like doing business with them. You enjoy that type of work or that type of business or that type of person to work with. But can you come up with a set of descriptive characteristics about that select group of customers? Now, I'm not suggesting that you're going to go out and fire everyone else, although I could make a case for, if I looked at your spreadsheet, I could probably make a case for some percentage of that business that you should fire. But the main thing I want to focus on is, can you create this crystal clear picture of who makes an ideal customer for your business based on the criteria I gave, and then start thinking in ways to move your organization, to move every communication, to move all of your marketing towards attracting and communicating with that select narrow group, to the exclusion of people that fit outside of that group. Now, for some folks, that's hard to swallow, but if you're going to grow your business, if you're going to become known to serving a unique clientele, if you're going to get out of price shopping business, that's something you're going to have to do. Now, the second step of that strategy piece is differentiating your business. I'll give you another action step. A lot of business owners will tell me, well, we're different because we provide good service. And frankly, again, we'll go back to this mythical raise your hand. If I were to ask you all on this call today who own a business or marketers in a business to raise your hand if you provide good service, and I'll wait, I guarantee you all of you have your hand up right now, right? That's not a differentiator. Whether people do or not, everyone believes that that's how they're different. It is absolutely essential that you find a way to clearly carve out a niche in the market, to clearly carve out a special way of doing something that nobody else can claim that they do. Now, here's your action step. Go to 3 or 4 of your top competitors and copy the first paragraph that you come to on their websites and just cut and paste it onto a blank document. And do the same for your own business. So you've got 4 or 5 paragraphs on this. And then go through and, there's a little tool in Word that allows you to black over all the words. So go ahead and black over all the references to any business that would clearly identify that business. And then pass that around your office and see if anybody in your organization, or if you're really brave, pass it to a couple customers and see if any of them can actually identify your business from another, or frankly, any of the businesses from each other. When I have done this exercise, 99% of the time, business owners immediately see, well, first off, they get a little depressed because they immediately understand that everybody in their industry is saying the exact same thing. But eventually, they come to see that there's a tremendous opportunity because no one is willing to differentiate themselves. And quite frankly, this is an area I get a lot of pushback on because a lot of small business owners don't want to be different. A lot of people in life don't want to be different. And I would suggest that this might be absolutely the most crucial element to building a marketing plan, building a marketing system, certainly in terms of building a marketing strategy, is that you find a way to identify and communicate some clear and valuable difference. So here's one of the things, again, from an action step. And if I'm going to cheat a little bit, I told you to pick one or two things. This is one that, this will be on the test. How's that? This is one of the action steps that I would suggest you clearly take. Go out and find five or six or seven of these ideal customers I talked about a minute ago, and hopefully you all have a few of those. And sit down and interview them. And ask them some of the questions that are on the screen right now. What would you Google if you were looking for a company like ours? That one you're going to find some really interesting answers, because a lot of times when we're out there building our websites and building our marketing materials, we make some assumptions about industry terms and what they should be putting into search engines to find our company. And what you're going to find probably across the board is that they may be using different terms than you are. Very, very important you know that. What made you hire us in the first place? What's the one thing that we do better than anyone else that in this industry? What's the one thing we could do better? Would you refer us? And if so, what are the exact words that you use to refer us? What you're looking for here is themes. One of the things I have discovered, and I have done hundreds of these interviews, is that most often the small business owner is one of the least prepared people to clearly identify and certainly articulate what it is they do that their clients value. 9 times out of 10, it's something other than what we're promoting as the chief benefit of doing business with our firm. In fact, I can't tell you how many times I have developed a marketing strategy and certainly the words and slogans right from the mouths of actual customers from my clients. What you're looking for when you do these interviews is just some themes to develop. Many, many times our customers appreciate little things that we do that we just assume everyone else does. And in some cases, those little things can be and should be the opportunity for what we're clearly communicating. So you're looking for themes, and what you're trying to find is themes that answer questions like this. This is way too much information to have on the slide, but I'm trying to give you the ideas here that you have some sort of a unique product, that they tell you have something that's unique about your services, your processes, the experience they have, your people, some kind of outlandish guarantee, a unique way to package. And that's not necessarily a box. That may just be a way that you put services together, a way you deliver those services. If there's a problem that is universal in the industry, or there's competitors that are universal in the industry, in many cases positioning yourself against the way that they approach business. These are the things that you're looking for, and I will tell you that in many, many cases they will come out of the mouths of your customers. If you are receiving phone calls, receiving leads, receiving referrals, and the first question people are asking is how much, it's a very, very clear indication that you are not differentiating yourself from the competition. Our prospects need a way to differentiate. They need, in most cases, their mind works in a way where they need to be able to say, I'm evaluating A, B, and C. And if there is no way for you to clearly say, well, we are so different because we do X, then they will default to price. And if you're getting price questions as number one on the list, there's a pretty good chance that you're not clearly communicating a strategy or some form of differentiation. And for those of you that spend a lot of time competing on price, I'm sure you've discovered it's not a great place to live with your marketing. There will always be somebody willing to go out of business faster than you. Not a very friendly place. Let me give you a little bit of an overview, and I'm going to use an example of a real customer here, or a real industry at least, of what we're kind of headed for then, the end game of this strategy. We actually have something, we use something called the talking logo, and for us, that is a very succinct marketing strategy answer to this question: what do you do for a living? A lot of times, in fact, in this case, this is an architect that worked with general contractors. And in a lot of cases, somebody would ask an architect what they do for a living. They're going to say, well, I'm an architect. And what I want to do is get you to think in terms of telling me your marketing strategy, telling me how you're different in a very succinct answer to that question. And not only succinct, but to some degree provocative, to the point where it actually forces the listeners to say, particularly a prospect, to say, really, how do you do that? Or tell me more, or I've got to hear more about that. If I say architect, I know what that is. I don't need to know more. I've heard it. End of story. The third piece of this is something we call positioning, goal, and statement. And all that simply is your internal kind of rallying cry. Our strategy, we believe our strategy can deliver us here. This would be something that you probably would never print. In some cases, maybe you would, but you probably would never print on any of your marketing materials. But this would be your internal goal, if you will, for where you're trying to head. And then the last piece is, can you craft a very, very, maybe even more succinct message that becomes your core message, that becomes your, again, marketers often refer to it as a unique selling proposition or a slogan or a tagline, but it becomes a really a key branding element for you. So the example that you see on the slide here was an architect that in many cases would work for whoever hired them. Any of you are familiar with the building industry, a lot of business is moved to what's called design build. In other words, it used to be the architects would be hired and then they would go out and find the contractors. But in this day and age, the contractors who said, hey, we don't mind marketing, we'll go out there and get the business, and we'll call it design build, and we'll bring in the architect as part of our team. And so they really, in the eyes of the architects, they stole a lot of the business away from the architects. Excuse me. So this architect decided, well, I want to play their game. I don't care where I get involved. I want to grow my business. And so what he did is he went out and interviewed. Well, we actually interviewed his customers, who were mostly general contractors, and they said, well, yeah, he does great work. The designs always get approved. All those good things that you'd expect. But what we really like is that he helps us get paid faster because he understands the zoning and the regulations, and we never have the red tape with all of those issues. And after hearing that about the third time, big red light went on. It said there's something in that. And we actually were able to reposition him. Now when somebody would ask him what he does for a living, he would tell contractors, we help contractors get paid faster. They had developed this zoning adjustment compliance system. In fact, it actually became a product for them. Their goal was to be the number one design build architect. Check that off the list. And their core marketing message became really, to some degree, against all their competition, against the current trends in architecture. They became the contractor's architect, and it dramatically changed their business because this became their strategy. And so then to some degree, just getting this word out in various formats became the tactical approach, but the strategy was so strong that the tactics were almost secondary. So let's move on to more of the tactical steps once we've developed our strategy. All businesses have become publishers. In fact, there's no business, regardless of how small, how big, the industry, product, service, B2B, B2C, that is not really being challenged to publish educational content. The Internet and the use of search engines has changed the game so much that any given prospect or customer is likely to know or could potentially know as much or more about a product or an industry or a service than the person charged with presenting that product. There no more can we grab a couple brochures and go out and make a sales call. We have to think in terms of being publishers of education, valuable content, and we have to do it on a very, very changing and aggressive manner. It can't simply be text and words either. The expectation that we're producing online content, that we're producing video, that we're producing audio has really become the norm. And I think the days when we would produce kind of the brochure website, the trifold brochure marketing materials are over as well. I think from our marketing materials, people are expecting certainly to know about our products and services, but about our people and about how to do what they want to do and about our processes and how we get them the result, and maybe even proof that we've gotten that result for other people, including success stories and testimonials. And all of that needs to go online. We need to be able to present that, as I said, in video format. We need to present it to a group and a workshop format. And we absolutely now need to, as we develop certainly a marketing plan, we absolutely need to develop a full-rounded content publishing strategy. This is one that a lot of folks come to me and they say, well, who's going to do that? How am I going to have time to do that? There are ways in which you can create content. A marketing kit content makes great online content. 4 or 5 blog posts can be turned into a nice article. 3 or 4 articles can be turned into a white paper. A white paper can be turned into a workshop. So we have to get good at repurposing content, but we can't sit this one out. It has become the expectation, and people who can demonstrate they understand the problem will win the business. On to step number 4. I want to introduce something that for some of you may be a new concept. It's really core, I think, to, in fact, I've had people that I've showed this next slide to tell me that this is the first time marketing has actually made complete and total sense to them in one slide. A lot of people are familiar with the marketing funnel, the idea of kind of having up at the top of this opened funnel all kinds of suspects and prospects swimming around in that pool with the idea that we were going to force them down through the tip of the funnel. And I believe that model is very broken, and I believe it for 2 reasons. Number one, I don't think it takes into consideration the idea of attracting the ideal prospect. I think that it portrays this idea of just anybody that we can market to. Hopefully we'll market to enough of them, and some of them will fall through the funnel. The second part that I think is broken about that is that in many cases, once that person falls through the funnel, it's back up to the top and let's go find some more. And I believe that your best source of new leads is your existing customers. In fact, what the absolute best way to tap lead generation is through a great customer experience. And organizations that spend as much time, or in many cases more time, on understanding the customer experience, on creating the ideal customer experience, will find that lead generation gets really, really easy. So the idea behind the marketing hourglass is that I talked about the definition. My definition of marketing is getting someone who has a need to know, like, and trust you. Well, then the next step in that is obviously to turn that know, like, and trust into try, buy, repeat, and refer. So what we want to do is get to the point where we have logically planned a progression of steps to the point where somebody comes to know us, they first become aware of us, and that we logically move them along this path to the point where they become a referral source, an advocate for our business. And it's done in a very, very systematic way. But unfortunately, this is what the marketing hourglass looks like for most small businesses. They attempt to go from, hey, here's who we are, here's our 800 number, why don't you call us so we can come out and sell you something? And in most cases, so of course skipping from no to buy, and the unfortunate thing is, in some cases it works. They actually get by. They actually sell some people because they had a need and you hit them on the right day, and maybe it was a great low-cost offer, and so you move somebody from no to buy. But by skipping like and trust and maybe even try, I absolutely guarantee that you are attracting some of the wrong customers. They haven't been educated to your process. They don't understand why you charge and deserve a premium for your services. And so part of this process is that you're educating them, you're qualifying them as much as they are qualifying you. And I know for some people that's hard to understand because we're all very, very wired to make an offer, get paid. But if you skip those steps, including the step where they can actually have a low cost or a trial offer of some sort, you will end up with customers that are not ideal. And certainly in most cases, once somebody makes the purchase, I can't tell you how many businesses drop the ball immediately after the buy part and don't do anything to certainly guarantee that there's a tremendous customer experience, but also continue to sell to them. I can't tell you how many businesses tell me this story. That they have a customer that they finally get this and they finally start marketing to them and staying top of mind and educating them after the sale, and then a customer will say repeatedly, "Gosh, I didn't know you guys did all that stuff," and it's such an opportunity lost when we aren't continuing to educate and create a great experience, and then obviously going for the ultimate, which is that referral. And I will tell you that for many businesses, they get a fair amount of referrals. But I will tell you that a referral is in many cases golden because it is a sign that you have not only logically met the expectations, you delivered what you said you were, it was the price, it was the timing, all those kind of logical things, but there's some sort of emotional connection that you've made as well. They like your people, they like the experience, they like the process, they think what you're doing is hip, whatever it is, you have connected at that level. And following this marketing hourglass is how you do that, moving people all the way through these. And what it takes is to actually look at each step and say, do we have a process where people can come to know us? Do we have a service, or do we have a workshop, or do we have advertising that promotes our content? Can we then move them to the point where they can find us online, where they can read more content and become to like us? Do we have a process? Maybe it's an evaluation, or maybe it's a workshop, or maybe it's our sales presentation where we build that trust. Do we have a process? Do we have a service where we actually allow people to try a sample, or to meet our people, or to somehow get some experience that is low risk, low cost? Then obviously, do we have the buy? Do we have our main product? But from that, then what do we do to start providing service, to start educating, to start helping them understand what else we do, or do we have products and services that we can add on after the sale? And then certainly to have a very systematic approach to taking that great experience and turning it into a referral. I'm going to show a slide here, and I'll leave it up for a little bit in case some of you are taking notes. These are the kinds of questions, if this is making any sense, these are the kinds of questions that you need to start asking yourself in terms of developing your processes and developing your product and service mix. I can't tell you how few small businesses, if they're not selling software, have some sort of free or trial offering. There is some way for you, regardless of what you're selling, for people to try it. In fact, many businesses have discovered that by taking maybe even their knowledge and their information and turning it into a $79 product that somebody can buy and download is a tremendous way for people to start to dip their toe in the water, to start experiencing what it is that you do. And all the questions fall from there. Is there a starter offering? In many cases you're trying to switch somebody. Is there a way for you to do that? Obviously your core offerings, but then what are your add-on offerings? And some of that can just be services that make a product that they bought better, or vice versa. They can be products that enhance a service. Are you building community? Do you have a members only? Do you have offerings that you can go out to strategic partners? An example I love to use is a graphic designer that I worked with at one time went out to a photographer and a print shop and a couple other specialties that they knew meshed well together. They got all of their strategic partners to give them something. So the print shop, for instance, gave this graphic designer 500 business cards for any of their customers. So if somebody was coming to this graphic designer to get a logo. They also got 500 business cards and a free headshot for photography purposes, and on and on. And what this person did is they put together such a strong package, but it benefited all of their strategic partners, and then they had a referral network between those strategic partners. So from a product service strategy development standpoint, those were all key components in moving people along, and certainly in differentiating as well. So moving on to lead generation, many of you have probably heard this has certainly become the very in term to talk about lead generation as being inbound now. The days when we went out and hunted and we bought lists or we cold called and tracked people down are really long over. People, buyers of all sorts have developed all kinds of tools and products and services to block out advertising messages that they no longer wish to receive, the TiVos and the call blockers and the email filters and all those things that really work so that consumers, buyers don't have to be, or I should say are less subject to outbound marketing efforts, have really made have really changed the game, and the game, of course, has moved to being about being found. And a lot of this idea of being found is in creating awareness about your content, being found online, being found because they read in a publication about your organization, being found because their best friend says, you've got to try so-and-so, they are the greatest. And so many, many businesses are developing or at least investing now in a really kind of a new way to generate leads. And as far as I'm concerned, I use the three-legged stool because for me, any lead generation plan that a small business develops needs to contain some component of advertising, public relations, and a systematic approach to generating referrals. And these all need to be looked at as both online and offline. In fact, one of the greatest opportunities right now is to actually use offline to draw greater awareness or greater engagement with your offline promotions as well. So merging those two opportunities as opposed to seeing one or the other. A few things build trust more than repetition, more than somebody experiencing your brand, your message in various formats. The other thing that we've got going here with this idea of mixing advertising, public relations, and referrals is I think you get the ideal blend of cost, control, and credibility. Each of these offers really more of one of those, and really the blending of them I think is what's so crucial. However, when I'm talking about advertising, I'm talking about narrowly targeted advertising. I'm talking about two-step, in other words, advertising that is direct response, that asks me to do something, and that do something 9 times out of 10 needs to be, if I'm creating awareness, if I'm still trying to build know, like, and trust, that do something, that direct response should be focused on getting me education. So sending me to download a free report, to attend a webinar, to hear a message of how to do something. That is the two-step approach. That is the ability to build trust with your advertising by creating awareness about your content, which demonstrates your expertise, which then allows you to build the trust that somebody now will be willing or interested in your message of try or buy. From the public relations standpoint, again, having a third-party publication write about your company, anyone who has experienced that understands that the credibility of that type of marketing is so much higher in some cases than something that they see as an ad. Although I believe that the area of public relations is probably one of the things that's been impacted as much as anything from what's going on online. It is the days of just sending out press releases to entire lists and expecting reporters to call has changed dramatically. It is about building relationships. Here's an action step I would tell all of you to take. If there are 5 or 6 journalists that you can identify either in your community or your industry, go to Google Alerts and put them on a list and follow. You'll get daily updates of everything they write. 90% chance they have a blog. Start making comments on their blogs. Start making comments about their articles. Start sending them information because in many cases you may have deeper information than than they actually have themselves, but they're asked to write about something. So building relationships with those 5 or 6 key journalists over time will turn you into a reliable and trusted source for them. If you do have great news stories, great. You should pitch them on the story as opposed to just faxing or emailing press releases. Now, for those of you that are wondering why I would be talking about not using press releases, and here I am on PR Web, which is an organization I believe in strongly, the use of a press release has changed in many cases, and PR Web, and again, I wouldn't be on here if I didn't believe this. PR Web offers a tremendous opportunity for you to create monthly touches, to use online press releases as a way to generate links to your site. Many people will carry press coverage in news sites. You can find yourself in Google News and Yahoo News because you have submitted online press releases. You actually have the ability to not only create backlinks but to directly touch customers now, and that is what's really changed. There are people that publish these press releases, that read these press releases, and it has become a tremendous venue for actually getting news and information out about your organization directly to the end user, directly to the prospect. I will tell you that it does also occasionally make a journalist pick up the phone and call you. A couple of weeks ago, I put out an online press release on this system. A reporter, a journalist from Inc. magazine called me up and wanted to know about this information that I put out. Ran a great story on an event that I was working on. So it does happen, but I would tell you, get in the habit of doing at least monthly press releases online to promote announcements, to get word out. To when you hire somebody, you get a new certification. It doesn't have to be this earth-shattering news. It's the kind of announcement stuff that sends the message that you're moving, that you're active, that you're doing things, but also gets your name, your brand in front of eyeballs. In many cases, these online press releases turn out and go a bit viral on Twitter and Facebook and some of those places as well, depending upon the content. Third component is referrals, and everybody loves referrals because in a lot of ways there's no cost involved with them. They can have great credibility. I will tell you that there are organizations out there that have built most of their business by way of referral, and I have a new book coming out in May, as a matter of fact, called, coincidentally, The Referral Engine. And when I went to write that book, I actually thought I was writing a book about just the tactical ways. I wanted to write a book about the systematic approaches that people use to get referrals. And what I found after targeting a handful and interviewing a handful of companies that I found were had lots of word of mouth or received lots of their business by way of referrals is the key is they just simply were more referable. So, in other words, that hourglass that I showed earlier was completely filled in. They had no gaps in their hourglass. People moved logically to know, like, and trust them, and then they enjoyed the experience once they got there. And that's what makes people talk. Now, having said that, targeting your referral sources, your customers, strategic partners. In fact, I think strategic partners can be some of the best targets for referrals or as a referral source, as long as they can understand how you're different, as long as you can take content to them like seminars and white papers and allow them to understand how delivering that to their customers could be of value. You can actually, in many cases, find a strategic partner that might have 300 or 400 prospects. Step number 6, lead conversion. This is one area that if you dropped me into a business and said, hey, you've got 30 days, what can you do to have the most impact? I will tell you quite often it's the selling process. Most small businesses don't actually have any process to convert a lead. Whoever answers the phone that day or the owner of the business goes out and makes a sales call because somebody said, hey, I want to know more about what you do. I believe that if any business is successful converting leads, and frankly this is an area where you can have dramatic impact. If you're already generating a lot of leads, just converting another % or two can have dramatic impact on your business. So what do you do? What's your next step when somebody calls, when they attend a workshop? Do you have that planned? When somebody says, yeah, I want you to come out and tell us what you do, do you have a presentation? I like to call it an internal seminar that everyone in the organization is delivering. Here's how we work. Here's how we're different. Is it almost scripted? Certainly if you're in an industry where the sales cycle is maybe longer, do you have ways to continue the conversation, to nurture those leads, have monthly touches? The last part of lead conversion is the actual transaction. This is another place I see a lot of small businesses drop the ball. Once somebody says, yes, I want to become a customer, what do you do then? I love using and recommending that people actually have something we call a new customer kit, where you actually would, once somebody says, I want to become a customer, where you'd actually orient them on, okay, here's how to do business with us. Here's everyone in our organization that you might need. Here's what we need from you next. Here's what we agreed upon today. Here's how we expected to be paid. It's amazing the professionalism that just having that simple sort of education step can cause. Now, the seventh step I have here is harness the Internet. And at one point, certainly, in the continuum, you could say, yes, that's a separate, the whole idea of the Internet and what we do on the Internet takes a separate strategy, takes a separate set of steps, but you could also make a case for saying that this has become a bit of an umbrella step as well. This slide, I'm not going to read these necessarily, but there's a couple statistics on here that suggest, the use of the Internet and how people use it. The one piece I will read, that 77% of U.S. adults see the Internet as an information source when shopping locally for products and services. So become extremely important for any business, whether they're selling shoes or legal services, to be able to really harness and tap what's going on in the Internet. There are a few steps, frankly. I call them the pillars of local search, because many businesses, these apply whether you're a local business or not, but at the end of the day, most small businesses are doing business in their own community. Setting up listening stations. I talked about Google Alerts already. Well, you should certainly set those up for your brand, for your company, for your competitors, so that you hear what's being said about your company, about your industry, about your products, about your competitors. Certainly localizing the content on your website. I can't tell you how many small businesses. I mean, if somebody's looking for a business in Kansas City, they type in Kansas City Plumber. And it's amazing how little content is on people's websites when they're trying to attract business locally. Putting brand assets out there in the Internet, and so all these social media sites, whether you decide that as part of your plan you need to get into that whole Facebook and all those other things, you should take the opportunity to claim that real estate. If somebody, and again, going back to this trust building piece, if you go call on somebody, I guarantee you these days they are actually putting in your name into a search engine, and if they're Googling you and maybe nothing comes up or very little comes up, sometimes that can be a red flag. And so the idea here is that by just claiming that real estate that you control, and having 10 or 20 results about your company come up that you control, in many cases, if you do nothing else with social media, it's probably a good step. So we want to start thinking in terms of this kind of hub and spoke approach, that you have your corporate website, but that your approach or your strategy is to build an entire web presence through videos and pictures and review sites and online PR and social profiles and podcasting, and certainly blogging is a tremendous way as well. So that everything is leading kind of back to your products and services, but you have all these outposts to do it. So I said this was the 7 steps, but I also always like to over-deliver. And so the last one I'll be very quickly on. If what I've said today is somewhat overwhelming, in many cases for small businesses it is, think in terms of developing a calendar. If you come up with 7 or 8 things here that you want to do or you need to do, like develop a marketing kit or start blogging, just create a monthly theme. And say, okay, this month we're gonna tackle this whole online PR thing. Next month we're gonna tackle building all of our social media profiles. Give it some weekly action steps, and then get in the habit of giving yourself a daily marketing appointment. block the time out, whether it's an hour or whether it's 10 minutes. If you put it on your calendar, what I find is in most cases you're more likely to do it. So there's a few kind of, we call them housekeeping slides that I'll do very, very quickly, and then we'll go to the Q&A. As was said in the beginning, this is really the point of view contained in the book, Duct Tape Marketing. It's available pretty much anywhere, certainly all the online stores. But I also have a network of coaches. So if you find that, gosh, this makes a ton of sense, but I'd like to work with somebody, go to ducttapemarketingcoach.com. You can probably find a coach there that is in your community. Or if you are an independent marketing professional who says, gosh, I would love to be a part of having a systematic approach and having these programs and tools, you can find out about really how to actually join our network as well. And lastly, as I mentioned, I do have a new book coming out in May 13th, but you can certainly pre-order that. The whole marketing hourglass and the referability approach is very much in that. You can find a little more there at referralenginebook.com. And my good friend Seth Godin says, what exactly are you waiting for? This book will pay for itself in a day. Seth is great about that type of endorsement on something he believes in. So I certainly appreciate the time and attention today. I know there have been lots of tweets, and that's good stuff to see. There are a couple announcements really from PR Web, and that before we go to questions, but for whatever reason that slide's not coming up, but I'll pass the ball back to you.
All right, thanks a lot. Hopefully what you should be seeing right now, everybody, is our live seminar and workshop, which is coming up Monday, March 22nd in New York. And we will have Randy Amon, who's an authorized duct tape marketing coach, who will be talking about some of the same themes and topics that you've seen here today. So if you're interested, all the information is on this slide. In addition, we're going to be at a show next week, Search Engine Strategies. At booth 118, we'll be doing a book signing by keynote speaker David Meerman Scott immediately following his presentation. So if you happen to be at Search Engine Strategies next week, we'd love to see you. And if you haven't registered and you're interested in registering for this event, you can save 20% with the coupon code you see down there, PRW20. So let's jump into questions here while we still have a chance. Oops. We had a lot. I'm going to try to mix it up a little bit, John. We had some very specific vertical questions. We had some generalized questions. But this is one that I thought was pretty interesting. You talked a little bit about the value of free trials and trials and getting people involved that way. We had a question from Michael, which was, how do you do that with a tangible product? We have a product that's in a clamshell. It's difficult to allow customers to try it because it needs to be repackaged. There's shipping costs to and from. So do you have any advice to offer on that?
Well, obviously that's a very specific question that I don't have all of the details, but that's my consultant answer, right? But the one thing that I try to get people to do is expand their idea of what a free trial is. It doesn't have to be a free trial of your product. If your product solves a problem, a lot of times a information product that actually explains everything, not sells your product, but explains actually how to do what your product does. It's amazing how often a lot of people will resist. It's like, oh no, we've got this cool proprietary thing that solves somebody's problem or gets somebody a result. We don't want to tell them how to do it. Well, most of the time, they don't actually want to do it themselves. They just want to know darn sure that you know how. Or it might actually be, another great example, it might actually be get a group of users, clients around that particularly if it's in a vertical industry, to talk about kind of their problems and how what challenges they have, almost like this peer-to-peer group, and record it all and just create industry valuable content. In many cases, that to me is a trial of what you stand for, what you believe in, some of your expertise.
So trial doesn't necessarily have to be, okay, here's my product, so I'm going to give my product up for free. Trial can take a few different forms.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that part of what we're trying to do is get them to try you, get them to try your business, your experience a little bit, get them sort of inside so they can kind of sample what you're all about. And that can be in the form of an audio, that can be in the form of a white paper or a webinar.
So actually, before I go ahead and ask this next question, I would like to just reiterate, I noticed we're getting a lot of questions about whether these slides and the archived version are going to be available. I mean, that's good because obviously the feedback here is looking really positive and people want to replay this. But just to reaffirm this, we are going to be sending out an email after the webinar with links and copies of the slide deck as well as a link to the archived version, so you will be able to listen to this again and share it with your colleagues. So back into the questions, John. We actually work with a lot of small business owners, and one of the most frequent questions we get is how can we use PR web? You know, how can we do PR or just online news releases when we have all these other constraints? Because these guys are working operationally. Sometimes they're doing sales. They're getting their hands into everything. So how can they get involved with an integrated marketing strategy in which PR is one component when they just don't really have the bandwidth?
Well, I can't really answer the bandwidth question. I mean, typically it just has to become a priority. And so, if that means once a month is all you can do it, I think that, I hate to be too cynical, but, don't check your email 400 times a day. That might be a start, right? I think that bandwidth is a cop-out for a lot of time, for a lot of folks when it comes to marketing. It's because maybe this isn't their favorite thing to do. But I think anything that we make a priority, I always like to use the tax example. It seems like we can all of a sudden we can organize all of our financial stuff on April 14th, when we couldn't do it all year long. And so, I think that is step number one, is you have to understand how valuable this stuff is. That's part of what we're trying to do today. And by doing so, you'll make it a priority. Now, having said that, it doesn't have to, a press release, for example, doesn't have to be a 1,200-word masterpiece. We're talking about announcements here in a lot of cases. We're talking about just getting 200 or 300 words of stuff out that's probably information that you should be sending to your clients, your customers already, that your salespeople should know about. So that's sometimes I think what holds people back is they have this preconceived notion that a blog post or a press release is hard, and you get a lot of value out of these tools by simply putting out information that might be of interest, but doing it consistently.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of times when we talk to customers, and they're like, "Well, I don't have time to write a press release." And we dig a little further, we find out that they're, heavily engaged in email marketing, they're in constant communication with customers, and they're sending out really interesting kind of content that could be easily shared on a news release service. They just don't think about that because they think, well, look, I can't read this. I wouldn't expect to read this on like the New York Times front page, so it probably isn't a news release.
Exactly.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, when you think about how you're framing the news releases you want to send out, what are the types of thought processes you go through?
Well, I don't know if you're asking from a subject standpoint or from an actual tactical, what would I write standpoint?
Yeah, I think I'm asking more tactically.
Okay, well, the biggest thing is spend about 90% of your time on the headline. Make sure that that is an ad for the great content that follows. A lot of times people will write really boring or factual headlines, and those can have some value from an SEO standpoint. But if you're really trying to get these, I think the growing, increasing value is that press releases are being read by our prospects and end users. And so make sure that headline just grabs me by the throat and makes me want to know what this is about. And you can, with a little time and thought and creativity, you can do that with the most, inane, a type of announcement with a little thought. Just, that I would say is probably crucial. I would also say, take advantage of amplifying your press releases. So you put it on PR Web. I mean, if you could take the time to add images. Again, it's the whole idea of making me want to read it. Add images, add a video. I mean, you can shoot a little YouTube video and upload that to your press release. I mean, all those kinds of things make it more compelling for a larger number of people, and just take the steps to do it.
Great. It looks like we're just about at the top of the hour. We had about 140 questions coming in, and I think we asked about 4.
Well, let's stay here for another couple hours.
Yeah, right.
One of the things that I would say, Jan, our contact information's on there. Mine's on there. If I'm not going to promise I'm going to answer 140 questions from people, but if people, I would. My blog, my Twitter stream, I mean, a lot of the stuff I talked about today is in great depth and for free at those places too. Great.
I think that's the final question I was going to ask you. If you're able to, and it sounds like you're willing to field some of these questions for people who are interested, that's a very generous offer on your part. And I think more broadly, people should just kind of visit your website, and I would recommend subscribing to your blog as well if they want to just learn more about you and the appearances you're making and the types of things that you're talking about.
You bet. We have an email newsletter that we send out weekly as well.
And so with that, John, I'd like to thank you. It's been great, and the feedback was just amazing. I wish we did have another 2 hours to go through all these questions, but I'd like to thank you for the time you have taken today.
Oh, you're great. You bet. I enjoyed doing it.
Wonderful. So everybody, if you wouldn't mind staying on for a few minutes after to answer a brief questionnaire, we will be asking a few questions about today's webinar, and the feedback you provide us with is going to help us improve in the future. On behalf of all of us, John, we'd like to thank you. This has been a presentation of PR Web. We're the leading online news and news release distribution service worldwide. We're going to be at SES next week if you'd like to stop by. And feel free to visit us on the web at www.prweb.com. This has been Jian Wei, Director of Product Management here on PR Web, and thanks for joining us here today.